Hi, and welcome to RealClearFetish Talks RealClearPlay, a podcast that dives into kink life and sober life and everything in between. This week, I am going to the Netherlands, and you get the two for the price of one. Hi, how are you doing?
Hello.
Hello, how are we doing?
Hi. Good.
Good.
Welcome to the podcast. I think it's the first time I've had like a free dual screen thing going on, so this is a first.
The next technical up-leveling.
Absolutely. So to start with, I do my four standard questions, and then we just go from there. So I'll do the first question, and I'll just let you both answer. If Alberto, you can start, and then Hans afterwards.
Yep.
What do you prefer I call you? Names, pronouns, and title.
Adalberto would do. Pronouns he, him. And title, just I use rubber. We'll get to that later.
My name is Hans, Hans West, he, him, and I am a Kink Aware Coach, so Hans is okay, I guess, to call me.
First, you, Adalberto. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, where to start? Yeah, let's say I'm on one hand import to the Netherlands, lived here for 20 years, originally from Italy. And the Netherlands is where I started discovering, exploring everything kinky. Well, everything, a lot. There's always more. Actually started in the leather scene for about a decade until I discovered rubber as well. That's a whole story in itself. And in the last probably 5, 6, 7 years, got more and more engaged in the rubber community and also in organizing events, and basically it's an excuse to buy more rubber myself. And in 2019, I had the privilege to carry the title of Mr. Rubber Netherlands. End of 2019, also bringing the world title Mr. International Rubber back to Europe. And well, a few months later, 2020, something happened. So got
I don't know what that would be. What happened in 2020?
I think we forgot.
Yes.
Bring a lot of activities online, and yeah, and I'm very happy to be here with you today, also together with Hans, because yeah, we'll get to probably chatting a bit about our projects together. So yeah, very excited to be here.
Fantastic. And tell me a little bit about yourself, Hans.
Well, if we're talking about being clear-headed, I wasn't when I was in puberty. Basically, I always say I didn't use heroin, otherwise I've got to name such a long list. And sobered up, got into physiotherapy, and well, I was already a kinkster. I was really rather early with that. In my career, there's 25 years of addiction help, and I noticed how kink and gay unfriendly often the addiction help was, and I really found that annoying. So I have my own practice. I help people to basically get clear, and then not in a you should quit now, but more like a why are you using? What's the yes? Why do you want it? And are there alternatives? Or can we say accept the fact that I might need to let go of things in my life? Well, that's basically the most important part, I think. And I met Adalberto just before COVID, and we were talking about doing a thing to help basically people, gay people, kinksters, and do talks. We were thinking of doing talks in Amsterdam, but as Adalberto mentioned, the COVID thing got everything online, and then we explored being online with KinkyTalks, and we're now at 50, so we're holding on.
Adalberto, completely sober, clear-headed, or social drinker?
Social drinker, but limited. In the sense, on one hand, alcohol for me makes me actually sleepy. So that's in a way maybe also automatic protection, because I know if I drink too much, I just really feel very tired in a corner. And it happened a few times at a dance party. It was not much dancing, a very horrible experience.
Same question to you, Hans.
Social drinker too. Yeah, but what can I say about that? I've flown close to a lot of things, other addictions, and I'm always trying to be aware with alcohol that I make a difference between addiction and dependence. If you're dependent, you have to use alcohol to have fun, for instance. And I always like to be clear about the fact that I want to be able to have fun without alcohol. And often when I go, I'm living a bit back in Holland, at Deventer. So I often have to drive, and if I drive, I don't drink at all. So I learn to party and dance without alcohol.
That's fantastic, because I think it's quite a valid point you make of like this distinction of being dependent or just wanting to have a little bit of fun when it comes to drinking, and having more healthy habits around it, and also not feeling like it's something you do need. And this is also one of the reasons I asked this question, because I think it's important when people listen to this podcast is to see it's, yes, the main focus is about chemsex and how to navigate sex sober, but there
Yeah.
are different ways of doing recovery.
Yeah.
And that's so important. And that's where you two come in as two very interesting people to talk to about this. So the last question, what is ClearPlay to you and why is it important? Adalberto first.
So I guess for me, on one hand, I'm at least to a good level a control freak. So I want to be in control of what's happening. At the same time, there's also, to some extent, I might want to let go of some tension, or if you like, maybe somebody you don't know yet very well, or the situation, or maybe the venue you are at. So find a little bit of balance. But for me, I really want to be present and enjoy. Yeah, so I would say that to really enjoy fully what's happening, really have a deep connection person to person, which for me does not require per se being really somewhere else.
And you, Hans?
Well, there's the social aspect, the emotional aspect, and of course, you can liberate yourself by drinking and getting your neocortex out of the way. So being able to more come to your emotions. But if that's the only way you can come to your emotions, you're on a slippery slope, I think. And then quite another reason, which is actually just or maybe even more important, I like edge play. So if I play with knives or suffocation, I don't want to be drunk. I don't want to be intoxicated. I want to be sharp, and I want to. I also want to remember what I did. I want to have clear memories about the dirty fun I had. If I would have been blurry about it was fun, I guess, then I don't kind of sorry of the experience.
Yeah, I think it's important. We see it far too often, accidents happening because people are just not 100% present, especially around breath play and stuff like that. And you see it time and time again where you just think, what were you thinking? But then again, they may not have been thinking because they might have been on something or drunk.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's actually some great answers there. So what let's dive into what is the connection between you two? Why are you both on my podcast at the same time?
Well, you tell us.
Well, but you do KinkyTalks in Netherlands.
Actually, the three of us met at Darklands earlier this year at one of our one of the live Kinky Talks we had on the theme of substance use, chemsex. And well, our friendship, as Hans introduced earlier, the end of 2019, where actually we met at Prick, which is a fantastic gay bar here in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Actually around a totally different project, which was about starting up a Miss Rubber Netherlands and competition.
Yeah.
Which hasn't happened because of COVID and then
Got lost along the way.
yeah. And it was that evening that I was talking to Hans that I guess we met, at least really talking for the first time. There we met en passant earlier about like I had kind of some ideas of creating some space of some events where we Kinkster could share experiences, basically because I'd had some experiences where I thought, things can go wrong, and actually I've learned so much from others, and there's no really, a place or a way to I wouldn't call it formally learn like a school, but basically like this fantastic podcast.
Yeah.
And I was quite flabbergasted when Hans just simply answered, "Oh, I'll help you." And we're like, "Oh, okay."
Well, as a kink aware coach, I've got a lot of knowledge basically about kinks. Physiotherapist, I got a lot of knowledge about body. As an addiction coach, and I got to know a lot about drugs and relationships, and also toxic relationships. And well, sometimes relationships are toxic, kinky or not. About a lot of people think about the kinky shit, so you can't talk about it, shouldn't be toxic, or it's all toxic. And having clear ideas about that, what makes things toxic or not, and having clear ideas about things that can go wrong. Having this thing about taboos, I do like taboos, and I like to break them, and I like to talk about things. So we had several talks, like for instance about suicide and chemsex, toxic relationships, and also a lot of fun, like cramming big things in tiny orifices. That's yeah. I like taboos, and I like to talk openly about them, and I like to talk about relationship and how to be able to have fun and have quality of life.
Yeah, I think we covered quite a range of topics, which if you just look at the list, you think, okay, but what is their focus? And I guess the only thing that bring that in common is something to do with the kinksters, mostly gay men, but it really from relationships, polyamory was really a fun one, to BDSM protocol, with also Spot as a guest, for instance, to more community based. Last week we had a talk about the different rubberman communities in Europe and how they started, because they all celebrate now 10 or 15 years. So what happened back then? How does a community start? So really a lot of topics in many different areas where we see there's interest to listen, to hear, for people to share their stories. And many people are eager, are as curious as we are, at least, to wanting to listen.
It's nice to hear about like having the space to talk about, like in a safe space, in a safe environment. There's no wrong or right questions, no judgment in what people are into, and just navigating the healthiness of it, and just like, okay, well, you do this, maybe you should do it this way to make sure you're safe and stuff like that. So you've been doing this for a while. So what has been the most interesting topic you've tackled? You of course tackled chemsex. You did that live at Darklands last year. Is that, and do you find that's ongoing theme between some of your sessions, that it comes up often?
Well, I guess that's one we have done at least 3 times now. So that maybe as a topic we touch more often. One, for instance, the very first one came more from us, because of course it's Hans also expertise, and the second one actually because somebody we know actually approached us and say, hey, I've had some experiences in the past months where I see actually friends and people close to me who, have been struggling, and I was almost, going down a bad path, and actually I want to share that. Well, yeah, take your space. We make the space for you, and go with that. So that was really, really, really personal and very, very nice to be able to give that space. Yeah, and then also live at Darklands, where you were also there, and we saw also a lot of interest in the topic. On one hand, I think it's also a bit sometimes tricky to talk about the topic, but we try to do our best to reach out, and then if somebody has the interest, then would join in.
And we try to talk about the taboos to prevent people getting hurt, and to prevent pain that maybe is not necessary. We had some backlash, for instance, when we said we want to talk about suicide. And there were people who said, well, we are gay, it should be more fun, it should be gay, you shouldn't talk about that. Well, we did, and well, people ruin their lives sometimes because chemsex, and understand, I mean, sex on cams can be fun, can be great fun, and you can really unleash the beast. And I remember quite clearly how my dominance was bigger on coke. If I then try to learn from that and take it with me as a learning experience, it can be a one-time thing. But if you got to do it time over and then time over again, and because it feels good, it feels like repeating. But when you do repeat, you always tend to unlearn other things and get things that really get in motion. And I've seen a lot of people in my work also who came to me and said, well, it enhanced the sex enormously in the beginning, and then later on, yes, I was just using and not having sex at all. And that's pity. That's a pity. I mean, I like to be sex positive and promote sex, and also all kind of dirty and kinky sex. And a lot of people do only combine sex with dope or alcohol, and aren't actually really able anymore to have kinky sex without dope.
Yeah, it's like my personal story is I got to a point where I had a friend ask me, when did I do sex sober last? And without even thinking and not thinking it was a problem, I just said 5-6 years. And that seemed like so normal to me that fine, that's not a problem. And trying to unlearn the damage that the drugs did took a long time. Wearing this would be triggering. Seeing certain locations would be triggering. It's one of the things I've always like when people ask about, but the sex is not going to be the same. It's like, no, it's not going to be the same. It's going to be different. And you're going to, in most cases, feel much more connected with the person you're with.
So I've seen it a lot in the fisting world or fisting activities, where sometimes I'm like preaching to some fistees, like, you don't really need, or why do you think you need dope, or why are you using? Because as Hans said, we both share the idea. It's not that it's bad, it's wrong, or it's good. It's fine. However, I've had a number of situations in which my play partner really believed that he needed a substance in order to relax. And in a few cases, I could like challenge that and say, well, no, it definitely helps. Of course, I mean that's like, but in a few cases when they kind of had enough trust in me to say, oh, okay, maybe I'm okay with trying that and taking time, and say, well, it's not going to be like a 30 seconds, or if you take something and then in 30 seconds you're relaxed, but actually the time it takes and the play around it, it's really, really hot. And yeah, it's different, and it's not that one is better than the other, but there's a lot to enjoy there, actually.
It's definitely fisting is the one that comes up a lot when people become sober. It's like I will never be able to fist again. It's like that's not true.
Yeah.
It'll just take a while to relearn it and be
Yeah.
okay with it.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that is the same with like you mentioned, Hans, about like edge play and stuff like that. There are things you get into when you like. I think a big one is crystal meth takes all your inhibitions away. So there's a lot of things you think you're into, but actually afterwards you have to navigate that where you work.
Sometimes it's actually traumatic, and you don't notice how traumatic it is under influence of Tina. I mean, there is no alternative.
Mm,
It kicks all the inhibitions away. But people sometimes, yeah, as I said, look back on things and are feeling I didn't have I didn't want to do that on in hindsight,
mm,
and I have trouble remembering that I did, and almost trauma reactions that I did. So on the one hand, it's great, you lose your inhibitions. And then on the other hand, it's risky because you lose all your inhibitions.
I see it at least when I was in recovery, when I did 12-step meetings and so on, I see it quite a lot. You get people come into the meetings who literally have PTSD from crystal meth use because they've pushed them so far over their limit. At the time, they weren't registering it, but their nervous system will register it afterwards.
Yeah.
Do you get like in your practice, do you get clients like that where you have to
Yeah.
navigate PTSD?
Yeah. And then understanding that the whole guilt thing about that, how to treat that. And also that you said several times, it takes time. It doesn't take time. It takes repetition,
Mm,
and repetition takes time. And helping people to take small steps and relearn things, and also to relearn how to get with your breathing, how to get your body under control, and how to understand your frenzy, flight, fight, freeze, feign death reactions,
mm,
and to recognize them and to know how to handle them and to know how to get that ladder, how to up that ladder.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's finding that balance and like you mentioned, repeat. It's definitely one of the things I was told to do. Put your leather jeans on for an evening, see how you feel with it, do it again, have a wank whilst you have it on, instead
yeah,
of connected to chemsex all the time.
yeah. Lay them in the room, and you get triggered, and you think, oh, I want sweat everywhere. But after a while, maybe you have other people in the room when you get out your leather pants for the first time. But if you just let them lay there and you get used to it, and the disconnection from dope slowly starts happening,
Mm.
and then suddenly, oh yeah, you feel like, let's put it on again. How does it look? And then show your ass, and then the fetish kicks in again. It takes steps. I always say it's very healthy to eat an apple, but it's really unhealthy to stick the one apple right up your throat. So you got to take bites. And if you take a lot of bites and chew them, the apple's gone too, and it's healthy. And it's you got to learn to take these small steps.
Adalberto. So you navigate the fisting scene with like there's quite a lot of chems on that scene. How do you feel it's changed over the last couple of years? Like the last decade? I feel personally I'm a fister. I enjoy fisting. I enjoy a lot of different things. So it's not my main thing. A lot of people like that's their thing. But I've a lot of the time when I talk to a fister, I can't play with them because they need something and it's a lot.
Yeah, well, I'm also not only into fisting. I always say I like too many things.
Yes.
But I personally I find it challenging at times. That's why usually I like to go out to venues or parties where there are more people and you can like, see if there's a connection and if there's no connection, it's like okay, both can, cruise further or with some people I know, which have built a connection. Sometimes I'm looked at like, oh, you're not taking anything. It's like I'm an alien, which I kind of got, I don't take it like personally or something, but still sometimes first few times I'm like, whoa, yeah, and I'm still alive on my two legs. But yeah, sometimes I find it a bit challenging because, if I like to have a mental connection and if my play partner uses a bit, it's fine. But there is a level where then, I don't like to play with a corpse, so to say, and then it just doesn't work. So yeah, navigating it's challenging. On your question, has it changed over time? I think this is purely an impression or my experience. I don't know if it's statistically true, but I think that the COVID times, the pandemic have not really helped in the sense that I have the feeling they promoted, of course, home parties, house parties, where generally there's more use than at the venue. But yeah, what is the chicken and the egg sometimes can be a discussion. But and I've been at some parties where people are perfectly organized and keeping an eye on each other. As you know, the list in the kitchen we do takes what, which I think it's a great way to to keep things safe. It's sometimes challenging for me.
So overview of like I have no idea. How is how is the chem scene? Is it worse or better or so on in the Netherlands? I have no idea how it looks there. Is it a big problem? As someone, I've never been to Amsterdam, and Amsterdam is known as the city you go to go to the coffee shops, and I know the locals don't really. It's more the tourists that do. So what is kind of the feeling of what is the chemsex situation in the Netherlands, Holland?
Well, it isn't London, but it gets more and more, and a lot of the addiction clinics don't really know very good how to handle that. So yeah, that's a bit of a problem, and it starts slowly spreading from the gay scene to the kink scene. But as said, it's not London. That's way more.
Mm.
But it is growing, and as Adalberto said, I personally, and that's not scientifically, but I personally think we're all way more shocked and by COVID and by the loneliness of that period than we even recognize. And because there were a lot of people who are already in the we shouldn't be here, but let's go out now and let's really make the maximum of it. There, a lot of people started to use drugs more than before. I do think it's growing.
Yeah, actually, this reminds me of a study I saw a couple of months ago. I guess it's not only here that the level of some drugs are measured in the wastewaters.
Yeah.
It's a measure of how much use there is in different cities.
You don't want to test it in London.
Yeah, and so it showed how before, so in 2017, 18, 19, it was a bit decreasing. Then 2020, 21, there was a drop. But then from 22 onwards, it really is going higher than before. So there is, at least in the total population level, clearly an increase of use, which I guess, yeah, we're not the only city experiencing that.
Well, it's so with the Kink Talks, is there any like subjects you haven't touched on you really would like to get your teeth sunk into in one of your future talks?
Well, we are always trying to find new things, but maybe we are also regurgitating some talks because they were a while back.
Yeah, this one I haven't talked to you yet, Hans, but I had some conversations early this week talking about which. So now it's live. So a while ago, we tried to organize one around boot blacking.
Yeah.
And now we found some connections of people that would like to talk about it. So that could be
Cool.
quite soon.
And asexuality, we haven't
Yeah.
asexuality. That's another thing that the misunderstandings about that.
Well, asexual, it's like on that subject, it's like you can be kinky and asexual.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the thing. And a lot of people don't fully understand how that works, but it does exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then looking at venues or events that many are very, well, sex oriented, but not only. There are lots of social events or a mix, like big events like a Folsom or Darklands, where you can do anything. You can hang out at the bar with for a conversation, or you can play. But indeed, I think in the community, we're maybe not used to that, or we're not aware that some of our friends and community members are, more in for the social, or talking also about not engaging in sexual activities at the party, being in monogamous relationships, which is also something that does exist and perfectly fine, of course.
Yeah, it's not. I'm polyamorous too, but I'm not one of these persons that say, "Well, but we're polyamorous, better." That's it's a challenge to do monogamy in a good way, but it can be really interesting to play with elements of that, and even for people in polyamorous relationships.
Yeah, and I'm actually just as we talk, I'm just scrolling a little bit the tiles and the flyers of the last few, because we really talk about kink activism, health, HIV PrEP, you and you is you, shame, polyamory, and and we're always open for suggestions. So anybody, you, Ralph, or any listener.
Well, yeah, it's like, because my podcast is so, like, it's one slice in a way, and then of course, depending on the guest, what they bring on to the podcast. With this one, of course, we talk about your kink talks and what you bring. So is it purely online still, or do you actually do some in person? Of course, you did the one in Darklands this year.
We did do last year and this year, and there was another one in Amsterdam about fetish white walks. There was more of a discussion evening also
About the visibility of kinksters fetish at Pride,
which is always an ongoing discussion.
Yeah, but it's growing lately.
It is. It is much more a thing now than at least
Repression
when I
is
started going
starting.
out. No one really batted an eyelid. But then again, I'm from Denmark. We don't bat an eyelid at a bare ass in the street. It's not really a problem.
that's great.
So, Adalberto, you are not originally from Amsterdam.
No,
What made you move to Amsterdam then?
well, so I first moved to the Netherlands exactly 20 years ago. Big celebration this year for an internship after my studies. Serendipity found me a position here, and then also met my partner, and stayed in the country. I always say it's an easy country to live in. I'm not going to talk about the weather.
I live in London. We know that.
Yeah, we actually surprisingly have pretty much the same weather in London and Amsterdam.
Yeah, we are approximately the same latitude, so that makes sense.
Yeah, here we are, still going strong, and I find the kink community and activities is we can talk a lot about it's not the same as in the 90s or blah blah blah, but there's a lot of stuff being organized, a lot of events, and also social events. Communities are thriving, and also there's this no nonsense type of approach. It's we often have socials together with different, like the Bluff and the Rubberman would have a social together around Pride, or with Dutch rubberman, with Belgian rubberman, and there's quite a open and if it's something fun, why not? And we organize.
So Hans, when did your kink journey start?
Well, I started quite early with a Barbie doll.
Okay, you have to explain that one.
Well, it's quite simple. A Barbie doll. I hardly knew what sex is, but I tied her up and I jizzed over her and I made clothes and I had a friend I often play with, and he had a Ken. And what I find really funny is that I am like a hetero dirty old man now, and he's like a gay dirty old man. So
Oh, perfect duo, really.
yeah, that was fun. And then as a hippie, I was really into feminism and thinking, I should be more nice and but I had these fantasies, and it was a really rough one to either respect and on the other hand disrespect the women in my life. And I remember that when I was 19, I went to this bar and an information evening, and there was somebody on the podium, and she said, "Well, what I like is," and she just named all the things I like, and I was. And I met Willem there, who was a old leather guy, like old school leather, and I really learned a lot from him. So that was great times when I was 20. And there have been periods in my life where kink was a bit less important. When I lived in Switzerland, my job was really important then, but then it always came back in waves. So
There must be like you must feel a big difference between, let's say, the gay kink scene and the straight kink scene, because I know, at least what I've been told here, in like we have a hunter, we have roast, and it's just dark room and blah, 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 blah. And then I've heard people go to torture garden where there's a lot of rules. You have to ask, da, 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 da. There's navigating. So it's a whole different way of navigating. How do you find, like, if you have clients who are gay and then you have clients who might be straight that's kinky, is it a different approach?
it's a different approach, yeah. Sometimes sexuality means something other than in the gay scene or in the hetero scene. Also, the fact that you were repressed during puberty kind of makes it more like I want it now and I want it all. Where sometimes also people almost traumatize themselves because they want everything now and basically go too far or go too fast and have to experience everything and are just ticking boxes and not experiencing what they're experiencing. And the hetero scene changed also. I mean, when I was starting in the hetero scene, I mean, women were allowed to come and be naked, but as a man, you shouldn't you shouldn't whip your dick out. So that's why I also started the meantime parties in Amsterdam in the Eagle, which is a great cafe and really open to other stuff. And I started there, and now about 40 parties there, because basically I wanted to be able to and fuck and play and whip and rope and gay and lesbian and hetero and so it's really an all gender party. So there's a lot of left. But it is true that in the hetero scene, men are easier. And in the hetero scene, you have to, if you take care of the women, if they feel safe, then you have a hot party. If they don't feel safe, then you have a shitty party.
And Absolutely.
So that's why often more rules are in the hetero scene than in the gay scene.
Well, then I can kind of like slide a little bit over to you, Adalberto, talking about international Mr. or Ms. or Mix Rubber now.
Mhm.
How did you find seeing that change now? Now it's just open to everyone this year. I watched the whole show because my puppy was competing as
Ah,
a non-title holder, and I was very proud
Banjo.
of Banjo. Banjo came second runner up.
Yes, very well done to Banjo. How was it? Yeah, so the this was the first edition, and I had was lucky enough that I was able to be there in Chicago this year. It's some work trip, and I could make a little weekend trip to Chicago
Yeah.
there. How was the change? I think it's I could talk for hours, so I'll try to spend more time, right? That's why we actually dedicated also whole Kinky Talk before summer, around summer, because I think there are many communities where that are very mixed. Thinking about in the rubber scene, Melbourne is always the example because their community has been, is quite young and has been mixed also in terms of gay, lesbian, straight, men, non-binary, women present, so very mixed. So they quite quickly changed from Melbourne Rubber Men to Melbourne Rubber, and so did then other clubs as well. Others, like for instance here in the Netherlands, the straight or women communities and events and parties are a different world from the gay men.
Mm.
And of course, things might change and develop, but kind of the moment there's like a big divide. And the question is over, hey, do we put something, top down or do you do bottom up? And how do you navigate?
Mm.
So in that sense, I think, and a local level is maybe different than at an international, where also in a way at an international event, I wouldn't say it's easier to do it, but as maybe different dynamics to say, hey, we see these trends and we actually, now it's a time that we develop and change and and in that way you can reach out to many more at an international level in terms of communication and then really bring in other groups where then the focus becomes the actually more the rubber itself. But I think it's not straightforward, it's not easy because it's in that sense also for maybe for many people makes it's logical
Mm.
because their focus has always been more the rubber, and that's what we have in common, and it's great. And anybody who likes rubber is welcome. For some people, there's an aspect also being, seen a safe space as a space where people of the same gender and sexual orientation, at least within smaller affinity definition, and then that's like, oh, then the scope has changed. So, but I think it worked well. But yeah, it's something that I'm very curious to see how it works because it also works if indeed other communities, other groups get involved and how to navigate. It's something that requires also a lot of efforts to make sure that things are channeled. But yeah, it's exciting to see what happens for sure.
It's nice to see there seems to be a change in how we perceive gender, how we perceive sexuality and expression as well. I've always looked at rubber as being much more experimental, much more gender fucking, if you could say,
Yeah.
where leather is a bit more, it's
Old
hyper
school.
masculine or hyper feminine. It's kind of
Yeah.
it's still catching up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I always say there's no Tom of Finland for Rubberman,
No,
and that's a big difference. And it's not good or bad; it's just a
it's just the
difference.
way it is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting to see and so on. Hans, you're a leather man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how because you engage with women, what is I don't meet a lot of straight leather men. How is that? Is it Tom of Finland or is it slightly different or
Well, for me, it is. I feel good. I think I look good. People disagree, but if I look in the mirror and I have a bit of a belly, in rubber I feel fat, and in leather I feel better, which is silly. And it was really interesting to on our last talk to hear like you can really learn from rubber to love your body, even it's not a great body. And I was but for me, leather is a part of a sexy body, myself in leather, and I'm not so much exhibitionistic about my body, but more about what I do. So I like to show off what I do to the woman I'm with, or the people I play with. And I like to be in this bubble, but being watched, and that's is basically BDSM play, whipping or knife play, and not strictly leather. So it's I can also play in my jeans.
We are like a lot of at least a lot of kinky men are very gear focused. It's about the gear and so on. But in some, I always find it quite funny when I talk to people. It's like, oh, you're too advanced for me. It's like, well, I don't have to put it all on. It's if you have a specific thing you like, and that doesn't include leather or skinhead gear or rubber, well, then we navigate, we negotiate, we communicate.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. We are coming to the end of the episode slowly, but I'll do a little fun question to you both. Adalberto, your first piece of kit you ever had, and what emotion did it wake with you?
Ooh, the very first piece, I think, must have been the leather that I bought in New York on the first trip to the US in New York, where me and my partner, I bought leather pants, he bought chaps, and we also bought a sling. The dollar was very favorable. And I still have them, even though I have some newer ones. They're still there, so that there is some something special about being the first ones. And then probably a second first would be probably some of my first rubber, because that's maybe another first.
And you, Hans, when was your first piece of kit?
My first piece of kit I made myself.
Oh, wow.
I was a student and I didn't have a dime. I was eating pasta pesto, making myself day after day because I just didn't have shit. And there was this girl wanting to play with me, so I had these old boots that I cut up and I made a collar and cuffs out of it, and I still have them. I really adore these old brownish things, and I made kind of a whip from an old leather cushion from a couch. Played with that for the first time when I was 20, and I it's a real dear moment that I still think of. I remember sitting there and we talked about everything and negotiated, and then I said, well, okay, let's start. And she said, what do you say? and I was like, never mind, but no. And I jumped over my shadow and I said, let's start. And then she crawled, and it was such a beautiful experience as a first in my life.
It's experiencing that power as a dom. That's absolutely. And you mentioned like your exhibitionist is like showing off or doing public stuff.
Yeah.
I've now done a couple of times. I've always been a little bit nervous about flogging in public because either my people will judge your technique or stuff like that. I have to not get too much in my head about it. And the last two times I've done it in public, I've loved it because it's just that they don't have to be a crowd of people watching, but just if there's one person looking at what I'm doing and they're enjoying what I'm doing to this person, oh,
Yeah.
so good, so good.
Well,
So,
and I give lessons in whipping. And if you make it into a dance, it's like, why, that's so fun.
Oh, I've seen a couple of videos where people use different techniques and so on. So I've been practicing a little bit myself and just figuring out. I do have a whip, like a proper whip, but I will not use it before someone teaches me how to use it because I would never use it on someone without knowing how to. At the
Start
moment,
with pillows. Start with
at,
pillows.
yeah, at the moment it'll be a nice little attachment on the side to scare a sub. That's it. So if there's any like rubber kink, it can be anything, a piece of advice you would give to someone from yourselves, Adalberto, what would you give?
A
And
piece
it
of
could be
advice
anything.
can be anything. Oh wow. On one end of the spectrum, I would say take if you're a newbie, like take your time. You might see a lot of stuff on X on whatever platform, but you don't need to do everything here and now next weekend. So take your time. And for people that maybe are for longer in the scene, also remember that there are newbies and everybody's different. So to really make, cultivate the curiosity, I often really say less judgment and more curiosity would make the whole world better.
Mm.
It's totally fine if somebody doesn't have the great technique of whatever activity, or the gear is maybe not the one that you like, it's from whatever vendor. And it's about the emotions, being together, having a good time. Just have fun, make sure that the event is fun also for others, and then that's the most important thing.
And you, Hans?
There's several things I want to say. Sometimes in the beginning, you can feel lonely with your kink. And I often say, well, Google your kink and add the word porn to it. And you suddenly notice there's a lot of people in the same thing as you are. Another thing I'd like to say in BDSM is that those really nasty people can be just nasty.
Mm.
And there are assholes in kink too, and people who try to peel away person and the society of and to get you just for myself, and I don't want you. No, we're better than that. So you're my sub, and don't go with other subs. Don't inform yourself.
Mm.
Be careful with those DOMs. Interact with other people. Get around and inform yourself and make it fun. It should be a part of your life quality. And if it isn't, then rethink that you might do something different, because it can have so endless many forms. Don't get yourself on this is BDSM and this is the true dom or this is the true sub.
Mm.
Fuck them. Make
Yeah,
your thing out of it.
maybe if I may add one thing that links to this is sometimes we might feel pressure to conform to the group or to the person we like, or the one, this really great person, good looking person, super sexy we met, because they indulge in whatever, then in order to be with them, then we do it too. And it can be activities, practices that I'm not really feeling well about, but well, I really want to be with this person this night. But it can be, of course, also topic and in using substances that maybe we don't know or don't feel like. And it can be challenging because sometimes our hormones want more, but that it's okay, to be different. It's okay to say no, or to say, well, maybe not tonight, next time. And there are more people that don't like everything or don't indulge in everything. It's okay.
So, if anyone's listened or watched and they've connected with something you said, Alberto or Hans, where can they get a hold of you?
So
KinkyTalks.nl.
yeah, kinkytalks.nl for Kinky Talks. Also, me, I'm mostly active on Instagram, MIR23, which is easier to remember than underscore something something, but usually MIR23 works.
Mhm.
And I guess on the website we also have a link to our social media. And Hans, for you, also your own website, I guess.
Kink Aware Coach.com, and in Dutch Kink in de Relatie, but that's not international, so that's in Dutch. And the addiction site is Praat met Hans, which translates as Talk to Hans, but that's also in Dutch. Praatmethans.nl.
And I was forgetting, for KinkyTalks, we are also active on Instagram, which is KinkyTalksNL altogether as well.
So thank you so much for coming on. It's been absolutely a joy to talk to you both. There's just a wealth of knowledge here, and we could probably keep going, but it's just been nice to kind of get to know you a little bit better. Who are the people behind KinkyTalks?
Yes, no, it's been fantastic also, really, as you say, to take the time to explore topics, discuss with us. That's so much that you know that you also heard from others on your podcast, and shaping this, creating this space where people can share their experiences. Clearly resonate with us.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and then I think it's great that you have this awareness about clear-minded and dirty.
Yes, absolutely.
I find that important. Often people in addiction services, well, you shouldn't do sex anymore. No, that just makes people want to use again. So I find it really important that you are clear about this.
Maybe a last more personal note, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, sometimes I did feel a bit lonely in being, on a clear, sober play, where my mind might question, but is that, am I the only one? And I think your activities and the RealClearFetish also helps to say, hey, I'm not alone, and others, also enjoy this too. And actually, there's many more than we imagine. So, thank you for doing it.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute joy to talk to you both. Thank you very much.
Bye.
So that was Adalberto and Hans talking from KinkyTalks from the Netherlands. It's absolutely been lovely to have them both on, just have a casual chat and get to know them a little bit better, who's behind these talks. And I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye.